I used to be an engineer, so I used to work in like oil and gas, offshore oil platforms and things like that, fixing sort of turbines and compressors and machinery. So I spent a lot of time by myself thinking, I don't want to be talking about this stuff anymore, and I want to be surrounded by things that I like talking about, like surfboards and motorcycles and push bikes and clothes and stuff like that. Spoke and stringer, a spoke holds a wheel together, and a stringer basically gives a surfboard its strength. There's like a line of wood that goes down the middle of a surfboard that gives it all its kind of strength, I guess. So I was just racking my brains of things like components that sounded good together on like motorcycles, and then eventually they sort of sounded right. So I've put literally all the money that I've ever earned and a bit of inheritance, my pension that I was working on being an engineer, into this. So it was kind of like an all or nothing investment for myself. I probably got about 30% investment, but I didn't go through the bank or anything like that, because I think you can, if you can, try and get hold of extra funds without going through banks or taking on loans and things like that, because your repayments are just like insane. So I had a pretty solid kind of business model, and you know how we wanted to kind of roll with things, and the fact that there wasn't really anything kind of like it happening in Bristol yet. So I did a pop-up shop in Bristol on St Stephen Street next to Mr Wolf's, which I went through all sorts of different people to try and work out how I was going to do it, but it was basically the council that I got in touch with, and they've got this like massive archive of places that you can look up and occupy. I wanted to get in here since like June last year. We only got the keys 8 weeks ago, then smashed like a 4.5 week fit out. You don't have any income coming in, so you're just like, every day that you're not trading is like a big hit. Even just finding out information about, you know, where the sewers go, because this is a project from like scratch. There was nothing in it. We didn't even have windows, had no toilets, we plumbed in everything. So there's a hell of a lot more involved than you might think. Say, do your maths, like big time, because I think a lot of businesses fail where they haven't really thought about how much everything's going to be costing. If you are going to rent somewhere, just keep it private, because as in private being the landlord works for himself, and it actually matters to him whether or not you're in there paying rent. Whereas if you go through like a big company, you're asking for trouble. Plus you can't really bargain with them, you know, like we had to pay for all our windows. Whereas if you went for a private landlord, actually they'd be like, well, maybe I should put windows in because it's going to increase the value of my property. Market research wise, again, really important. Is there a need for whatever you're doing? Do people actually want to buy whatever product it is you're selling? If I'm bankrupt at the end of this, I've got a contingency plan in Australia where I can sort of get on a plane and get out of here quick.